Hi, this is David Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. And whether you're watching with our friends over at Torah Anytime, or wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, it's always nice to have you along. And we have a special sponsorship this week. I'm reading from what's written. In memory of Kalman Moshe ben Reuven Avigdor, Rabbi Kalman Packhouse, on the first yahrzeit, which is the 18th of Cheshvan. Through his original trailblazing Torah faxes, emails, first ever Jewish computer dating service back in the 80s, Western Wall webcam, overall influence and unconditional love for the Jewish people, this world became a much better place because of him. And he left a huge hole in the hearts of all who knew and loved him. I add my own personal thoughts. This was written by his Rebbitzin, who I had the schus to know when she was just a little girl, when I was learning in Eretz Yisrael back in 1999. And I can tell you that I had the schus to know, Rav Kalman, and the two of them are just exceptional people who lived their lives for Klal Yisrael and just gave and gave. And at the end of time, when you turn around and you look at who are the unsung heroes of this world, people who do so much. Gemara says, person got up to Shemayim and he said, Olam hafuch re'isi. And the greatest heroes are often not appreciated in this world. And I just want to add that the world is a poorer place for us losing our Packhouse, and his family and Klal Yisrael should all have a nechama. Okay, we started last week. There was an inauguration shiur last week, an introductory shiur to the topic of dating and marriage. Call it shidduchim and zivugim, call it anything you want. It's something that I think is so important and so fundamental. And as I mentioned, not enough attention is being paid to preparation. As they say in English, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Or as we say in Torah speak, if one person can keep the donkey from collapsing, but once it collapses, it takes 10 to pick him back up. So, sof ma'aseh v'machshavet chila. Okay, so let's get started. I'm talking about marriage. I really am. I'm not really talking about just relationships in general. Yeah. You can apply some of the principles we're going to discuss to other relationships for sure. I'm talking about marriage as an institution. Yeah. So the thing about marriage is it is between a man and a woman. I know today that line has been blurred in the secular society, but I don't care. I used to give this course to people who were not only not religiously observant, but might not have been inclined towards Torah ideas. And I would always say, this is a value-free zone. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to teach. I want to explain to you the Torah's point of view. The Torah's point of view is a marriage is between a man and a woman. Gan Eden, right? Like we had in Gan Eden. Adam and Chava. There was not Adam and Bob. There was not Chava and Susie. There was not all four of those people. There was one man and one woman. Yeah? And that's the idea of a relationship. As such, a relationship, a marriage, is going to be between a man and a woman. Now, Moshe Shapiro made an observation once, and he said, things that are opposite, you get to see their uniqueness the most when they interact. And he gave an example, right? Water irrigates and creates fertility and allows things to grow. And the ground grows things. Yeah. And where do you find the most lush vegetation? By the riverside, where the water and the ground meet together, and the water becomes more water, the earth becomes more earth, and the two of them join together to produce. So he says, in a relationship between a man and a woman, a man becomes more of a man and a woman becomes more of a woman, and the differences become that much more pronounced. So what I wanted to do at the beginning, because we live in a world where everything is so fuzzy. We live in a fuzzy world. Yeah. I forgot where it comes, some quote from some Westerners on that. When men were men and women were women, yeah. Real men, real women, yeah. So I want to understand from a Torah point of view, was meant a man, was meant a woman. Yeah. Now, this is usually presented when they present this in the context of women's role in Judaism. You know, the problem is when you talk about women's role in Judaism is that you neglect to discuss men's role in Judaism. Egalitarianism is not a Torah value. Quite frankly, it doesn't work. Because if you essentially tell women that you can do everything that men do, so that men have no unique role at all, you know what happens in those instances? They drop out. And so there was a study that was done by two professors in Brandeis University. And they found, if I'm quoting this correctly, that in reform events, 90% of the participants are women. Men dropped out. Because when you bent over so backwards to make sure that women can do everything in Judaism that men can, so men are like, well, then you don't need me here. What am I coming for? And men vote, men, women, everybody, they vote with their feet. If they don't feel that they have a role to play that they're happy with, they will leave. And the amazing thing is that in the frum world, which is not egalitarian, there are very high levels of participation among the community, both of men and women. So obviously, the fact that women have a different role than men is not something that is causing them to abandon orthodoxy with abandon and go to, I use abandon twice there, yeah. It's not causing them to leave Judaism with orthodoxy with abandon, yeah, or to abandon orthodoxy with alacrity. Both seem to be staying in for the program. And that's what's always so interesting, is that people don't always understand when you make a change, the ramifications that change is going to have. Yeah. I had a student in Or Sameach who had his degree in entomology. I think, I always mix up entomology and etymology. I think it's entomology, which is the study of bugs. And he talked about the dung beetle project in Australia. Because in Australia, they did not have, for the most part, mammals. They had mostly marsupials. So when the English came across, they brought with them sheep and cattle. And whatever is the bacteria, the force, whatever is supposed to be breaking down the manure of these animals did not exist in Australia. and entire fields were getting covered with dung. So they introduced into Australia the African dung beetle to be able to try to deal with that, right? So you brought in this change into the ecology. You didn't understand that there'd be consequences. And he said to me, that was one of the successful attempts. There have been unsuccessful attempts. For example, they brought rabbits to go hunting. But in Australia, the rabbits didn't have any natural predators. And rabbits breed like rabbits, and they were taking over the country. So they brought in stoats to try to catch the rabbits. But they realized that rabbits are harder to catch than the marsupials. So they, instead of catching the rabbits, they ate up the natural animals that were living in Australia, because you don't always appreciate what the consequences are going to be. So sometimes an idea sounds like a great idea, but when you look at it in its full context, so this is the idea. The idea is, according to the Torah, men are men and women are women. And each one is different. And I say, viva la différence. Because as Rabbi Shapiro once explained, two left hands can't embrace. Only a left and a right hand can embrace. Only if two things are different can they work together. And the attempt to erase all differences ends up with levels of dissatisfaction. Yeah. I was giving a discussion in question answer session, wherever it was, you know. And this woman said, I don't understand why there are different rules for men and women. So I said, are there any differences between men and women? And without hesitating, she said, no. I said, I want to take a moment for you to look around the room and see if you can spot any differences between men and women. So she says, okay, physical. I said, okay, physical? Are you assuming that physical differences don't affect the way a person thinks and acts? If one person is teeming with estrogen, yeah, do you think that might affect the way that person acts? Yeah. Don't you understand that the testosterone level can affect the way people think and act? Study after study have shown differences between men and women, between which is more dominant, the left brain or the right brain. Rabbi Meiselman, who was Shiva Torah Moshe, wrote a book on men and women. And he was discussing the idea of women prayer groups and these sort of things that were taking place at the time, you know. And he says, I'm writing an article about it now. He says, I'm not using any Torah sources. I'm using Professor Gilligan. Now, as it happens, I was familiar with what he was talking about. It's always nice when somebody of the status of Rabbi Meiselman is talking and you have some idea what he's talking about. I remember when he wrote his book on Torah and science, I said, oh, I'd love to see a copy. And he says, oh, good. I'm hoping that a layman who doesn't know too much about Torah or science could give their input. He didn't mean it in a bad way. But I had read a series of articles in the New York Times Magazine section about Professor Gilligan back in the 1980s, where she was doing research. And she said something as simple as the difference in development between men and women, the physical development. How in the world do you think that won't affect them psychologically? So people go to therapy and talk about their traumas from toilet training, and growing up with this and that. Do you think something is traumatic? As one person's testosterone level and one person's estrogen level causing physical changes in people won't affect the way they think? And she had reams of data. And she said, whenever I go to a conference, it's like a shootout at the OK Corral. Because people are outraged because I'm going against the accepted norm that there are no differences between men and women. And it's heresy to suggest it. Who cares about the facts? Understand? My mind is made up. Don't confuse me with facts. And the fact of the matter is, and this is what I said. I said, so why did God create us as men and women if we're meant to be exactly the same? Make us asexual, like the parameciums. Life is so much easier. You don't have to go out on a date. You don't have to get married. It's just you. If you want another one, just split in half. Zoop. Oh, look, he looks just like me. Same little paramecium shape and everything, Why would he make us as men and women if we're supposed to be exactly the same? And so if there are differences in us physically and differences in us psychologically and differences in the way that our brains work, is it too much of a stretch to say there's a difference in our souls? And that's the Jewish position. And therefore, any time you attempt to artificially impose something on somebody else, it never works out well. Never. Because people are people. And so in spite of years and years and decades of attempts to make the genders irrelevant, little boys are always shooting things. Anything they pick up turns into a gun, and little girls tend to nurture. Are there differences? Yes, there are differences. Right? Of course there are differences. There's always going to be a certain range. But you talk to any parent who has boys and girls, and they will tell you there are certain innate differences in the way boys act and girls act. It's just a fact. And you can mask that fact, and you can blame it on anything that you want, but the fact remains that boys, for the most part, act in certain predictable ways, and girls, for most part, act in particular ways. There's a certain reality that the Torah recognizes. And you can make it up. You can create false constructs from today till tomorrow, but it doesn't change anything. Because at the end of the day, when I talk to audiences and I say, who wants to get married more? And it doesn't matter if I'm talking to Jewish audiences or non-Jewish, religious or not religious, older or younger. I say, who wants to get married more, boys or girls? And everybody says girls. Somebody once said, no little boy ever dressed up as a chassan on Purim. Most men aren't sitting there, dreaming about the perfect wedding day they're going to have. There are exceptions. I'm not talking about exceptions. I'm talking about reality. The Torah embraces reality. When I would teach very often, I would stop and I'd say, I would look to the crowd and I'd say, am I making sense? Is what I'm saying making sense? If not, tell me where the floor is in my logic. So this is the Torah idea. HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a man and HaKadosh Baruch Hu created a woman. And each one is going to find their fulfillment in different ways. And if you try to force a woman to be a man or a man to be a woman, there's going to be a lot of unhappiness. And that's why you see, when Judaism tries to turn women into men, the men leave. That's what this study showed. Men aren't interested. And when the men have their role, the women have their role, like in the Torah world, looks like they both stay. So be that as it may, right? That's the defense of my presentation. That's not the presentation. Yeah. So in English, there are neuter terms. It. It's possible for you to make a sentence and not know whether what you're talking about is masculine or feminine. That does not exist in Judaism. Everything is male or female. And when I say everything, I mean a chair, a table, a door, soup. Everything is male and female. And the upper spheros, there's what's called duchra v'nukva, abba v'ima, right? Chochma and bina. So there is a duality in everything in this world. Okay, you know this part. Everybody knows this part. This beautiful wedding part. We'll talk about it again. Right? You have to say this at some point. Yeah. The word for man in Hebrew is ish. The name for woman in Hebrew is isha. It's the same letters except the man has a yud, the woman has a hey. And Rashi tells us the yud represents shamayim, the heavens, which makes sense because yud is the only letter that floats above the line. And hey represents this world. Hey is based in this world. So the relationship between Shemayim and Ba'aretz is a good way to understand the relationship between men and women. So let's go in how the ground produces life. Flowers, grains, anything you want. The rain falls. Wood is the earth takes it in and uses that to produce life. That is the male-female relationship. And obviously, when it comes to being able to have children, that is the easiest way to tell the difference between a male-female relationship. The man makes a contribution, the woman internalizes that contribution and uses it to produce a child. That is the male-female relationship. To put it into fancy hashkafic terms, it's called a mashpia and a makabel. One is giving, and the other one is receiving. And that's always the way it's going to work. Something in this world is going to give, and something is going to receive. So in the most male and female aspect, as I mentioned, right, when you put the two of them together, you see them the most. The man is giving an external contribution, and the woman is internalizing that in order to be able to produce a child. Yeah. That is the way it's supposed to be, which means, to put this into easier philosophical terms, the man's contribution is external and the woman's contribution is internal. This, by the way, has halachic manifestations. When a man is not dressed, he cannot make a bracha. A woman can. Because a man's, the term we'll use as erva, is considered external and a woman's is internal. Because the man is external and women are internal. Therefore, the man is going to express himself in external ways, and women are going to express themselves in internal ways. Women spend an enormous amount of time inside of their heads, much more than men do. You can see women sometimes going like this. And they're thinking. The comedian Jerry Seinfeld, he said once, he goes, I bet you women are wondering what we men really think. I'll tell you, nothing. Just nothing. We're just walking around minding our own business. Dave Barry, in his book, he was a humorist with the Miami Herald. He's retired now, but he wrote a book on, Dave Barry on guys. I should really read it. I don't have it here with me, but I should really read it if you can find it someplace. It's so brilliant. This couple is dating for a few months already, and and they're out on a date, and they're in the car, and the girl says to the guy, we've been dating now for 3 months, and the guy doesn't say anything, and she says, uh-oh, does he feel like I'm pressuring him? And the guy thinks, 3 months? I'm way overdue for an oil change. And she says, I'm not pressuring him, but I think that at some point we have to figure out where we are, where this relationship is going, how things are developing. And he says, I'm going to have him check the transmission too. And then she says, is he being pressured? Am I pressuring him? But don't I have a right also in this relationship? What am I thinking? Maybe I want more, or maybe I don't. Maybe this isn't what I want either. And he says, the last time they messed up the transmission, I was not happy. And she says, maybe I'm being unrealistic. I'm not just waiting for some prince on a white horse to come along and sweep me off my feet. Here I am with a perfectly good person. Why do I feel like I'm not prepared to make a commitment? And he says, if they tell me that it's a problem in the transmission and they did it right, I'm going to really lose it this time. This thing shifts like a truck. She says, look, he's getting upset. All because of my lack of commitment. And finally she says, I know there's no knight. I know there's no horse. And he says, what? I know there's no white knight on a horse. And he says, a horse? She says, I'm so sorry. Can you ever forgive me? And he says, yes. And she goes home that night, tortured soul that she is, and lies in bed, tossing and turning. And the next day she calls up 3 of her best friends. They all go out for coffee, and they review the entire conversation, everything he said and she said. Rolling it over back and forth, never getting any clarity, but never growing tired of the discussion. He goes home, turns on a tennis match, opens up a bag of chips, and forgets that the conversation never took place. Until a week later, he's playing, tennis with a mutual friend and says, does she have a horse? Now, is this an exaggeration? No, not at all. And that's why I always point this out. A man comes home and finds himself in the middle of a fight that he didn't even know about. She started without him. And he walks in and she's all upset and he doesn't know why. He just doesn't get it. Sometimes he doesn't even know there's a fight. He sees her like this. And he senses that there's something amiss. He's not sure what it is. He says, are you upset about something? No. Oh, good. Yes. Whoa. Men don't spend that much time inside. We tend to be more external. And therefore, Judaism creates for us more external expressions, whereas women have more internal expressions. I. Kaplan, on his little sefer that he wrote, It was an English pamphlet originally on tefillin. So he says, Al Pi Kabbalah, women have tefillin built into the body. Men have to take it and tie it on their head. Remember there's a God. Put it on your brain. Tie it on your hand. Remember. Put a yarmulke on your head. Remember. God is there. Remember. Women don't have to have an external reminder. Just the opposite. The externalities take away. So men have to go to shul and they have to have a minyan. Why? Because it's group sports. 10 people get together and chant. Yeah, hey, Shvei, Rabba, yeah. But where do we learn out the laws of tefillah from? From Chana. She goes in alone into the Mishkan, closes her eyes, her lips move, and no sound comes out. So Eli, the man, looks at her and says, she must be drunk. That's not how you daven. Yeah, hey, Shvei, Rabba, yeah. She must be drunk. But she's reaching inside of herself to produce something deeper. I'll give you a mashal. About 30 years ago, I think about 30 years ago, I've lost track of time, might be 40 years already. There was a work of fiction written called Star Wars. And in this, there's this guy, Han Solo. And he's a man. He's very much a man. He's got a blaster. He blasts things. And then there's this kid, Luke Skywalker. He's a Jedi Knight. Doesn't know this. He's a Jedi Knight. And his Rebbe, Obi-Wan Kenobi, says to him, listen, you aren't like him. He has a blaster. He goes out blasting all day. Your koyach is inside of yourself. Reach inside of yourself. And you can do much cooler things. He goes out and does stuff. You can reach inside of yourself. In the Torah perspective, women are Jedi Knights. They have an internal power. You know what I mean by internal? Yeah. My wife, when she was pregnant with our children, every now and then she would go like this. I said, what's the matter? The baby's kicking me. You notice what that means? Someone is living inside of her. Can any man relate to that? Indigestion, that's as far as we get. But there's actually somebody inside of you. You can sense this internal power. We don't know what that means. Things are external. But people who are internal understand how to use the koiches inside of themselves. And if you take somebody who's internal, take Luke Skywalker and you give him all the machines, etc., then he can't use the force. He's got to turn everything off and just use the power inside. So the more that you try to turn a woman into a man and give him external man things to do, all you're going to do is short circuit the force that she already has. Now, there is a Jewish feminist movement to which these ideas are heretical. But that's only because there is nobody in this world who's more of a misogynist than a female feminist. Because the only thing they value is a man. So if a man can do something that I can't, that must mean that I'm inferior. I got news for you. A lot of things women can do that men can't do. Can't have a baby. Can't nurse that baby. Yeah. There are things that women can do that men can't do and never will be able to do. And so women want to keep the things that make you uniquely women and also take the things that men do, which from a Torah perspective, besides the fact that it, of course, makes men superfluous, yeah, it ends up not allowing the women the ability to be who they're supposed to be. And so we live in a world where where the only thing we value are male values. Stay home with the kids. So, build lives, build children, build neshamos. They've done studies and they ask people who's the most powerful person in the world. They say the President of the United States. When they say who had the greatest impact on your life, they say my mother. What can be more important than developing people? But society tells us we have to go out and do things. So Rabbi Orlofsky said, I felt bad, I didn't have a career. So I went to work at a daycare center, but my baby was too old for the daycare center. So I had a friend of mine who had a play group. So I dropped her off at the play group and I went to the daycare center to work. And the woman who ran the play group, her son was in the daycare center. So if we each stay home and take care of our own children, then we're meaningless. But if I pay you to raise my kid and you pay me to raise your kid, now we both have a career. It's a world of backward values. Anyone who defines themselves by their career. When you turn around at the end of your life, and you think, I remember seeing a tagline on someone's email once. It says, at the end of your life, you won't regret that I didn't spend more time in the office. So the idea is that women have an internal quality and men have an external quality, and everything that we do is determined by that. And that's why the woman is called the bias, and ben is from the word boneh, to go out and build. That becomes the ideal relationship. Does that mean the woman has to stay home, and take care of the house? No, of course not. But the way I always put it was, you're in charge of the house. There's no idea of 50-50. I'm in charge of the house. You're in charge of the house. We have to split everything. No, you're in charge of the house. As much as I'm part of the staff, and you say to me, could you do this? Could you do that? Take care of that? That's fine. But you're the one who is the bias. You're the one who's in charge of the home. And every army, in the Jewish army, there's the people who go out and fight, and there's the Yoshev Kalim, the people who stay and guard the home front. You go out and fight and you come back and you don't have a home to come back to. So when we approach marriage, a person who's going to approach marriage and say, well, this is just a meeting of equals, there's no difference between us, you'll have a lot of difficulty building a Torah home. Men have a particular role and women have a particular role. And the more comfortable everybody is with their roles, the more successful we will be in being able to work together as a left hand and a right hand to try to be able to create that bond. So when going into marriage, the beginning, the process, a person has to ask themselves, am I comfortable in my own skin? Yeah. Do I know what a man is? Do I know what a woman is? And am I comfortable with this role or not? Because if not, you're going to have a real hard time going into a relationship that is defined by an ish and an isha. Okay, that's it for this week. If you want to find out more about the show, you can go to my website, RabbiOrlofsky.com. You can make a comment. You can email me. You can sponsor an episode. And that's it. I'm David Orlofsky, and this is the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabbiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.